The night started quiet. Too quiet for a place like Maple Ridge, where neighbors usually talked on porches and dogs barked at anything that moved. Evan didn't think much of it at first. He just wanted a calm evening, a little peace, a break from the long week that had drained him more than he wanted to admit. But something in the air felt different, still, heavy, like the kind of quiet that happens right before life shifts in a way no one expects. He noticed it the moment he set his keys on the kitchen counter. The house felt colder than usual, even though he kept the heating steady. There were no lights on, except the warm glow above the stove. He tried brushing it off. He told himself it was just the mood that came from being alone too long. Evan had always been good at pretending things didn't bother him. He joked his way through most problems, smiled through stress, and pushed past anything that threatened to slow him down. But that night, pretending didn't come easy. He walked through the house, checking windows out of habit. The wind was moving the trees outside, brushing the branches against the siding in soft, scraping sounds. He sighed, trying to relax. He made himself some tea and sat at the small dining table. He turned on a show he'd seen a dozen times, hoping the familiar voices would ease whatever strange feelings sat in his chest. But halfway through the episode, he heard something, a sound he couldn't ignore. It came from the hallway. A faint thump. Soft, quick. Too deliberate to be the house settling. Evan froze. His eyes shifted toward the dark hallway that led to the guest room and the small storage closet beside it. He didn't move for a moment. He only listened. Another soft thump followed, then a quiet shuffle. His heart tightened. He lived alone. Evan stood slowly. Every step felt heavier than the last as he walked toward the hallway. He didn't turn on the main lights. Something in him felt unsure, caught between fear and curiosity. The hallway felt colder. Shadows moved across the wall from the streetlight outside. When he reached the guest room door, he noticed it was cracked open. He hadn't left it that way. He pushed it open gently. The room looked untouched. Bed neatly made, curtains drawn, everything exactly where he'd left it last week when he'd dusted and tidied up. But the sound hadn't come from there. It had come from the small storage closet to the right. The door was shut, but not fully, barely an inch open, like someone had pulled it closed in a hurry. Evan's pulse picked up. He reached for the doorknob. The metal felt cold. He took a slow breath and pushed the door open a few inches. Then he stopped, because he heard breathing. Soft, uneven breathing, coming from inside the dark closet. His first instinct was to step back. His second was to turn on the hall light, but he didn't do either. He stood there, frozen, listening to the quiet, shaky breaths from someone or something just inches away. He swallowed hard. "Hello?" he whispered, even though he wasn't sure why. The breathing hitched, and then silence filled the space again. Evan felt a chill run up his spine, but he kept his voice steady. "Who's in there?" Slow and uncertain. He pushed the door open a little more. The dim porch light leaking through the curtains gave just enough glow for him to see shapes. Boxes, old coats, a stack of books. And then, someone sitting on the floor, huddled, arms wrapped around their knees, face hidden in the shadows. Evan's breath caught. He didn't recognize the person. He didn't know how they got in, and he had no idea why they were hiding. But one thing he did know was this: tonight wasn't going to stay quiet, not at all. Near the edge of his voice, a thought rose. Part fear, part confusion, part instinct. Whoever this person was, they weren't just lost. They looked like they were scared, terrified, maybe even hurt. And Evan felt something shift in him, a tug he didn't understand yet. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. The silence stretched, and the stranger finally lifted their head just enough for a sliver of light to fall across their eyes. And that single look left Evan with more questions than answers. Evan kept his hand on the closet door, unsure whether to open it all the way or step back. The stranger inside barely moved. Only their shallow breathing filled the space between them. It was the kind of moment that stretched time, making everything feel slower and sharper at the same time. "Hey," he said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just need to know what's going on." The person didn't answer. They pulled their knees a little closer, almost flinching at his voice. Evan noticed the faint tremble in their shoulders. Whoever they weren't trying to be threatening. They looked exhausted, scared. He could see that now. "What's your name?" A long moment passed. Then, barely above a whisper, came a reply. "Lena." The name floated out, shaky and small. Evan felt something ease inside him. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "Okay, Lena," he said gently. "How did you get in here?" Lena lowered her head again. Her hair fell around her face, making it hard to see more than the outline. I didn't break anything," she said, her voice cracking. "The back door was unlocked." Evan blinked. He knew he locked the door earlier. He always double-checked. But the way Lena spoke, she didn't sound like someone making up excuses. She sounded drained. He exhaled slowly. "Why my house?" he asked. Lena hesitated again. Every question seemed to make her curl into herself a little more. "I didn't know it was yours," she whispered. "I just needed somewhere safe, just for a little while." Evan felt a tight pull in his chest. Safe. That word hung heavy. Whatever forced her to find shelter in a stranger's home wasn't small, and it wasn't simple. He took a step back from the closet, giving her room. "You can come out," he said. "I won't call anyone. I just want to understand." Lena didn't move right away. Her fingers tightened around her sleeves like she was holding herself together. But after a moment, she shifted and slowly stood, her movements stiff from sitting on the floor so long. When she stepped out, Evan finally saw her better. She looked around 26 or 27 years old. Her clothes were wrinkled and dusty, like she had been walking for a long time. She had small smudges on her cheeks, and her eyes were red, as if she had been crying earlier. Evan's concern grew. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "No, just tired." He nodded. "Do you want some water?" For the first time, Lena looked up properly. Her eyes softened, and she gave a small nod. Evan guided her to the kitchen. She moved quietly, almost like she was afraid of making noise. He grabbed a glass, filled it, and handed it to her. She held it with both hands, sipping slowly. He watched her for a moment. She seemed fragile, like one wrong word could make everything collapse. But there was something else in her, too, something strong beneath the exhaustion, a kind of resilience. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I didn't want to bother anyone. I thought I would just rest a little and leave before anyone came home." Evan shook his head. "Lena, you don't have to apologize. I just want to know what you're running from." She looked away, breathing in shakily. "I wasn't running. Not at first." Her voice softened. "Then I didn't have a choice." Evan felt his chest tighten. He stepped a little closer, but kept his tone gentle. You don't have to tell me everything, but if someone is looking for you or if you're in trouble, I can help. Lena shook her head quickly. No, no police, no calls. I can't risk that. That made his stomach twist. Whatever this was, it wasn't simple, and it wasn't something she felt safe sharing. Okay, he said quietly. No calls, I promise. She finally looked at him again. There was gratitude in her eyes, and fear, a mix that tugged at him in a way he didn't expect. He handed her a towel so she could wipe her face. She took it, hesitating for a moment as if unsure she deserved the kindness. Then she held onto it with both hands. Can I just stay for a little? She asked, barely above a whisper. Just tonight? Evan felt the question settle deep inside him. He knew letting a stranger stay wasn't the safest choice, but looking at her now, he couldn't imagine sending her back into whatever darkness she'd come from. Yeah, he said softly. You can stay tonight. Lena closed her eyes for a moment, relief washing over her features. He didn't know what happened to her. He didn't know why she ended up in his house or what secrets she was carrying. But he knew one thing. This night wasn't done changing his life. And something told him the truth behind Lena's fear was about to change everything he thought he knew about quiet, ordinary nights. The rest of the evening passed in an uneasy calm. Lena sat at the small dining table, sipping water, while Evan put away the few dishes he had left out. Neither spoke much. The quiet wasn't awkward. It felt fragile, like if one word fell the wrong way, it could shatter everything. Evan kept sneaking glances at her. She seemed to shrink into herself, shoulders hunched, hair falling into her face. He wanted to ask more, but he could feel her boundaries. Whatever had driven her to his doorstep tonight was heavy. He couldn't push. After a while, he set a blanket on the couch. You can rest here, he said. I'll be in the next room if you need anything. Lena nodded silently, still hesitant. She took the blanket and curled up, her eyes closing briefly as if letting the exhaustion of the day hit her all at once. Evan watched her for a moment, a nod of curiosity and worry tightening inside him. He went to the living room and sank into his own chair. His mind kept turning over the same questions. Who was she really? Why his house? And what had made her so desperate she would hide in a stranger's closet? Hours passed. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, each second stretching the tension in the room. Evan tried to focus on a book he had been reading, but his attention kept slipping back to Lena. There was something about her presence, quiet and fearful, yet somehow commanding, that made the air feel heavier. Then, around 10:42 p.m., she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly. Evan looked up. She seemed restless, almost jittery, as if some memory had crossed her mind too sharply. I shouldn't have come here, she whispered. Evan shook his head gently. It's okay. You needed help. You came to the right place. She bit her lip, unsure. I know that sounds strange, but I've learned not to trust people, not even for a moment. Evan nodded, understanding more than he expected. I get that, but sometimes you have to take a chance. Her eyes lingered on his. There was a spark in them now, a flicker of trust. Small, but there. And for Evan, it was enough to let him feel that tonight wasn't just going to be about helping a stranger. Somehow, it was going to be about uncovering something far deeper. Hours passed in silence again. Evan had made himself a cup of tea, hoping the warmth would help calm both of them. Lena remained curled on the couch, her breathing slow and even. But then, just as he was starting to relax, A sound pulled him out of the quiet, a soft knock at the front door. His heart jumped. Evan froze. He wasn't expecting anyone. The streets outside were quiet. Who could possibly be there at this hour? He exchanged a glance with Lena. Her eyes widened slightly, reflecting the fear that he already felt knotting in his stomach. "Who is it?" she whispered. "I don't know," he said quietly, keeping his voice low. "I'll check." He moved to the door slowly, feeling the tension build with every step. Each heartbeat felt like a drum in the silent house. When he reached the door, he peered through the peephole. The porch was empty. Evan blinked, confused. He stepped back, listening. No footsteps, no voices, just the wind rattling the trees outside. He exhaled slowly, trying to calm his racing thoughts. Maybe it had been a branch, or maybe someone had knocked and left quietly. Then he noticed something at the bottom of the door. A small envelope. Plain, white, no markings. He picked it up carefully. His fingers trembled slightly. Lena leaned over his shoulder. "What is it?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Evan shook his head. "I don't know yet. Let's see." He opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with writing that made his stomach drop. It wasn't a note of thanks. It wasn't a friendly message. It was a warning. "You shouldn't have brought her in." Evan's hand froze. His eyes darted to Lena, who now sat rigid, eyes wide with fear. Her worst suspicions, the ones she hadn't shared, were clearly real. Who would send this?" she stammered. Evan didn't answer immediately. He scanned the house, every shadow suddenly feeling threatening. Whoever had left the note was watching, maybe following, maybe waiting, and the stranger in his home, the one he had just started to trust, was at the center of it. For the first time, Evan realized that tonight wouldn't just be a quiet, strange encounter. It was going to turn into something far more complicated and potentially dangerous. And the truth about Lena, her past, her fears, the reason she had come to him, was still buried in silence. He felt a shiver creep down his spine. The quiet night was gone. Everything had shifted. Evan couldn't shake the chill from the note. His eyes kept darting to the shadows, half expecting someone to appear. He wanted to keep calm, but something about the words gnawed at him. You shouldn't have brought her in. Who would say that, and why? Lena sat on the couch, hands wrapped around the blanket, staring at the floor. Her quiet breathing hinted at panic she was trying to suppress. Evan could see it in her eyes. This wasn't the first time she'd faced fear like this. He took a deep breath. "Okay," he said slowly. "We'll figure this out. But first, I need to know, who's after you?" She flinched, like the question itself had weight. "I can't tell you everything," she said softly, almost shaking. "But I can't ignore it anymore. Not tonight." Evan nodded. "Start with what you can." Her story came out in fragments at first. She had moved to Maple Ridge just over a year ago, escaping a job situation that had turned dangerous. She hadn't meant for it to reach this point, but some people had followed her, tracked her somehow. The envelope wasn't a coincidence. It was a message. Evan listened, heart pounding. The fear in her voice was raw and real. He wanted to ask questions, dig deeper, but he held back. She needed space to speak at her own pace. Minutes turned into an hour as she explained enough for him to understand the gravity of the situation. Whoever was following her didn't want her to find safety. They wanted control. And now she had unknowingly brought that danger right into his home. Evan felt the weight settle in his chest. He had always thought of himself as careful, rational, but this was different. He had opened his door to a stranger, and now that stranger's past had become his problem. He reached out gently. "You're safe here tonight, I promise. We'll figure this out." She glanced at him, eyes wet but determined. "Thank you," she whispered. "I know it's complicated, but I trust you, at least for now." The trust hung between them, delicate but tangible. Evan felt something shift, a protective instinct he didn't expect, stronger than curiosity or caution. Then came the soft sound of glass tinkling in the kitchen. Evan stiffened. Lena's eyes widened. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. He nodded. "Stay here. Don't move." Evan moved toward the kitchen, careful not to make noise. The house felt suddenly enormous, every creak magnified in the quiet night. The sound came again, lighter this time. A shadow flitted near the counter. He froze, hand on the counter. Then he saw it, a small folded note lying on the floor. Another one. His stomach sank. He picked it up. The words were written clearly. "Don't get involved. Leave her alone." Evan felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. Whoever was doing this was bold. They were watching, waiting, sending messages instead of showing themselves. He turned to Lena, who now clutched the blanket tightly. "We can't just sit here," he said, softly but firmly. "We have to do something, but we need a plan." Her eyes met his. Fear, yes, but also a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the first time in weeks or months that someone had offered her protection without judgment. They spent the next hour discussing options quietly. Evan suggested they lock all doors and windows, make the house look occupied, even though it was late. Lena agreed, adding small details about who might be following her and what they had done before. Every word brought the situation closer to reality. They were dealing with someone smart, patient, and dangerous. Evan realized he needed to stay calm, to think clearly. Panic would only make the night worse. He made a mental note to call for backup in the morning, once the night had passed and the immediate threat wasn't pressing. But for now, they had to survive these hours together. And in that shared survival, something unexpected began to emerge. Lena relaxed slightly as Evan showed her how to secure the house. She followed his instructions, her hands steadier than before. The small victories gave them both a sense of control in a situation that felt otherwise uncontrollable. By midnight, the worst of the anxiety had settled into a tense watchfulness. They sat together in the living room, speaking softly about inconsequential things, childhood memories, favorite books, local cafes. For a brief moment, it almost felt like a normal night. Almost. But neither of them could ignore the truth. Whoever had sent those notes wasn't done. And Evan realized that protecting Lena might mean confronting danger he had never imagined facing. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the promise of a long, uncertain night. Evan and Lena sat close enough to feel each other's presence, but careful not to breach the fragile comfort they had found. Their shared fear had created a quiet bond, and in it, something else began to grow, something neither of them fully understood yet. And then, a shadow appeared at the window. Evan's heart skipped a beat as he saw the shadow at the window. He froze for a moment, unsure whether to confront it or call the police. Lena's hand found his, gripping tightly. She didn't speak, but her wide eyes mirrored his own fear. He took a slow breath, trying to steady both of them. "Stay behind me," he whispered. "We'll handle this." Evan moved cautiously toward the window. The shadow didn't move away. It seemed deliberate, almost taunting. He peered through the glass and saw nothing at first. Then a figure shifted near the porch light, just outside the reach of the glow. "Who's there?" he called, voice steady but firm. The figure stepped back into the shadows. No reply, only silence. Evan turned to Lena, trying to keep his calm. "We can't stay here like this. We need to make a plan, and we need to stay alert until daylight." She nodded. "I trust you," she said softly. "I've never trusted anyone like this before." Evan's chest tightened. He didn't know why, but hearing her say that made the weight of the night feel heavier and lighter at the same time. He realized he had begun caring about her safety in a way that went beyond instinct. They spent the next few hours securing the house as best they could. Windows were locked, doors double-checked, and the lights dimmed in a way that made it harder for anyone outside to see inside. Evan suggested they keep the front curtains slightly parted, enough to see the porch, but not enough to be obvious. Lena helped. Her hands moved quickly, methodically, as if she had learned to handle tension in ways Evan hadn't. Her composure surprised him. Despite the fear in her eyes earlier, she had a strength that was quiet but undeniable. By 2 a.m., they sat in the living room again, the notes from outside still on the counter. They hadn't opened them again. Part of them didn't want to provoke whoever was watching, but they both knew they couldn't ignore the warning. Evan looked at her, and for the first time, he realized how connected they had become in such a short time. A stranger had walked into his life, bringing fear, mystery, and now a bond he hadn't expected. "Thank you for trusting me," he said quietly. She looked down, hands folded in her lap. "I didn't have a choice," she said, but there was a hint of a smile. "But I'm glad I did." The hours crept by slowly. The wind outside continued to whisper through the trees, every rustle making their hearts skip. Yet, in that quiet tension, they found a strange comfort in each other's presence. Then, around 3:15 a.m., a knock came again, so soft it might have been mistaken for the wind. Evan and Lena froze. "Not again," Lena whispered. Evan shook his head. "We'll check. Together." He approached the door slowly. Lena followed, hands lightly brushing his arm for reassurance. The hallway felt impossibly long. Every creak in the floor made them both flinch. When he opened the door, the porch was empty. The wind had picked up, bending the branches near the porch light. But there was something on the doorstep. A small, worn notebook. Evan picked it up. The cover was plain, but inside were pages filled with handwriting, careful, precise, and occasionally frantic. The notebook told a story, a history of fear, of someone being followed, of danger lurking just out of sight. It detailed events that matched Lena's life, confirming everything she had whispered to him. She leaned close, eyes wide. "They've been documenting me," she said softly. "All this time, I didn't realize." Evan felt a surge of protectiveness. Whoever they were, they had underestimated him now. Lena was safe inside his home, and he would do whatever it took to keep it that way. The notebook also revealed something else. Hints about who these people were. Names, locations, subtle clues that suggested they could be traced. Evan's mind raced. By daylight, they could go to the authorities. They could finally start reclaiming some control over the situation. But tonight was about surviving until dawn, about staying awake and alert while trusting each other, about understanding that the ordinary had vanished, replaced by something extraordinary. Hours later, exhaustion began to win. Lena leaned against Evan as they watched the faint light of early morning creep through the curtains. The fear was still there, but so was a fragile sense of hope. In that quiet moment, Evan realized that a night that had started as ordinary, calm, and unremarkable had turned into something life-changing. He didn't just meet a stranger. He met someone whose life intertwined with his in ways he could never have imagined. As the first hints of dawn painted the sky, Evan and Lena sat together, a silent promise forming between them. They had faced the unknown, braved fear, and discovered trust in the unlikeliest of places. And though they didn't know what the future held, one thing was certain: the night had brought them together, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. The ordinary had ended. The unexpected had arrived.